Lil Woody pulled the trigger on YFN Big Nut Young Thug rented the car, and the entire situation ended up getting exposed in open court, right in front of a jury during the longest criminal trial in the history of the state of Georgia. These weren't just rumors from the streets or gossip from the blogs. We're talking court records, police interrogation footage, sworn testimony, and a star witness who walked into that courtroom, looked prosecutors dead in the eyes, told them everything they wanted to hear, then weeks later flipped the whole script and claimed he made it all up. Y'all really need to hear this story because the internet twisted this case into something way simpler than it actually is. This goes way beyond rap beef, bigger than YSL versus YFN. This is about a man named Donovan Thomas Jr. known as Big Nut, somebody who was building real connections in Atlanta's music scene, somebody tied into both the streets and the industry, managing artists who would later become some of Atlanta's biggest names. And on January 10th, 2015, he got shot and killed outside a barbershop in southwest Atlanta, broad daylight. No warning, just gone, and the question sitting at the center of one of the wildest, messiest, highest stakes hip-hop trials ever was simple. Did Young Thug order the hit? Because according to prosecutors, Thug rented the car. They claimed Lil Woody Kenneth Copeland was inside that vehicle. They said, order traveled through a network stretching from Atlanta streets all the way to a prison cell where Kyle, an alleged sex money murder leader, was already serving life. For murder, prosecutors claim Big Nut became a target because he was supposedly getting ready to cooperate with authorities. And they argued Donovan Thomas Jr.'s murder is what turned a heated feud between YSL and YFN into a full-blown war that allegedly led to more than 50 shootings and murders over the next 7 years, 50 over nearly a decade, and prosecutors traced all of it back to one drive-by outside a barber shop on January 10th, 2015. Let me really break this down from the start before we even get into how Donovan Thomas Jr. died. You gotta understand who he actually was, because online, people reduced him to just another name in an indictment, but Big Nut was much more than that to the people who knew him growing up. He was Donovan, a kid from Atlanta's Summer Hill neighborhood, the type of environment where you quickly learn opportunities are limited and the streets stay close weather. You like it or not, his mother, Shawana Edmond, told jurors she started calling him Nut because when he was born, he looked like a tiny little peanut, and the nickname just stuck with him. That detail hits different when you're sitting inside a courtroom, listening to a murder trial unfold. His mother humanized him, a son, a father of two. But Nut wasn't just some background figure. By his mid-20s, he had carved out a position right in the middle of Atlanta's street culture and music business. And if we're being real in Atlanta, those two worlds have always crossed paths more than people like admitting. Here's the real story about Big Nut's place in the culture. He was managing Rich Homie Quan, and for anybody who forgot, this was 2014 and 2015. Rich Homie Quan was one of the hottest rappers in America at that time. Type of way of flex dude was everywhere, and behind the scenes, Donovan Thomas was helping keep things moving. He was also connected to Think It's a Game Records, the label tied to both Quan and YFN Lucci. Early in their careers, Nut was around for major moments, and Lucci and Nut came up together in Summer Hill childhood ties. Lucci's project, Along Live Nut, was literally named after Donovan Thomas following his death. That's how deep that relationship went. Nut wasn't just somebody hanging around rappers. He was one of the people helping connect them to the industry in the first place. Now law enforcement saw Donovan Thomas differently, according to reports from the New York Times, and something prosecutors leaned on heavily during trial. Thomas was allegedly a high-ranking member of a blood subset called the Inglewood family in Atlanta. That group reportedly aligned with the broader YFN network, not just the rap side, but the actual neighborhood faction tied to Summer Hill, and that allegedly placed Big Nut on the opposite side from Young Thug's YSL Young Slime Life, a Cleveland Avenue crew prosecutors described as blood-affiliated too, but rivals. So now you've got two worlds colliding. YSL from Cleveland Avenue, YFN and Inglewood family from Summer Hill, both tied to Bloods, both connected to the streets, both connected to music, and tensions had already been brewing long before January 2015. But here's what really made the case explode. Prosecutors claimed Big Nut wasn't targeted just because of street politics. They alleged he was about to cooperate with law enforcement and testify in an ongoing investigation. According to the indictment, that information supposedly reached Young Thug, who allegedly passed it along to sex money murder leader Kyle Aya, already serving life behind bars, and investigators pointed to a monitored prison phone call where Ari allegedly said sacrifices must be made, soldiers must fall for battle. to be one that call allegedly happened. Just 2 weeks after Big Nut was killed, those exact words ended up inside the indictment, and if that's really what happened, then this isn't just rap beef anymore. That's organized crime territory now to understand how everything led up to January 10th, 2015. You gotta look at what happened just days earlier, because prosecutors said one specific incident pushed everything from tension to straight-up chaos, and it involved the same man who later became the prosecution's key witness, Kenneth Copeland, aka Lil Woody. Rolling Stone and court records both reported that shortly before Big Nut's murder, somebody from the Icon side allegedly robbed Lil Woody at a South Atlanta nightclub. Took his stuff right there in front of people. Now, in Atlanta street politics back in 2015, that kind of disrespect doesn't just disappear quietly. That's a statement of challenge, and according to prosecutors, it made things personal between Woody and YFN. But there's another layer to defense. Attorneys later focused on heavily Young Thug's lawyer. Brian Steele claimed Lil Woody and Big Nut had their own personal issues completely separate from YSL politics. During cross-examination, Steele alleged Woody broke into Donovan Thomas' car and stole his phone chain wallet and ID, and according to Steele, Nut found out and wanted retaliation. Woody admitted on the stand he'd heard Big Nut wanted him physically harmed. He admitted it himself, and that matters because suddenly the entire motive changes. Now it's not just gang politics. Woody himself may have had a direct personal reason to fear Big Nut. So now you've got Woody getting robbed at a club, allegedly stealing from Nut, worried about retaliation, and deeply connected inside the YSL circle, where Jeffrey Williams, Young Thug, was the face. Then within days, Donovan Thomas Jr. is murdered. Here's how prosecutors laid out the timeline. They claimed Young Thug rented a silver 2014 Infiniti Q50 from Hertz rental documents, allegedly had his name attached. Prosecutors said that same car became the drive-by vehicle used in Big Nut's killing Lil Woody. According to statements he gave police back in 2015, claimed he had possession of the car and helped coordinate movements around the shooting. Then on January 10, 2015, outside Heron Limited Barbershop in southwest Atlanta, somebody inside that vehicle allegedly opened fire and killed Donovan Thomas Jr. He was only 26 years old. His mother buried him on January 17th. Exactly 1 week later, during trial, she spoke about her son as somebody trying to transition deeper into the music business, talking about artists and opportunities. She didn't bury a gang member in her eyes. She buried her child. Now this is where things get crazy, because from the second the murder happened, everything about who pulled the trigger, ordered it, and why it happened became heavily disputed, and sitting right in the middle of all that confusion was a man who kept changing his story for almost 10 years. Fast forward to June 2015, around 5 months after Big Nut's death, Lil Woody gets arrested by Atlanta police on a gun charge. Sitting inside that interrogation room trying to save himself, he starts talking, and what Woody told investigators that day became the foundation of the prosecution's entire case against Young Thug. When the interrogation footage later leaked, prosecutors admitted it sent shockwaves through the streets online because Woody sounded exactly like what people call a snitch. In the footage, Woody described the murder in detail. He claimed Young Thug drove to a Texaco gas station, switched vehicles, and handed the rented Infiniti over to YSL members who later used it in the drive-by. He painted a whole story, connecting Thug directly to the logistics behind the killing. He also started discussing another alleged murder plot supposedly active at the time. Woody told detectives somebody was supposed to get killed that night and claimed he had information about a planned hit targeting Kelvin Shala Sheekheel, one of Big Nut's closest associates. According to Woody, the person organizing everything was moving carefully and hard to track. When investigators pressed him about who he meant, Woody nodded and confirmed Jeffrey Young Thug. That's what was captured on tape. That's what prosecutors played for jurors in 2024, nearly a decade after the recording happened. But then everything flipped upside down, because when Woody finally took the witness stand during the summer of 2024, he completely torched the prosecution's case. Woody told jurors everything he said during that 2015 interrogation was fake. He claimed he invented the story about Young Thug switching cars at the Texaco station. He said surveillance footage proved Thug was never even there. Brian Steele reinforced that point during cross-examination. Woody testified he lied because he was scared under arrest and figured giving police a huge celebrity name might help him get released. They want to hear about Thug, so I'm finna sit here and gas him up, Woody told the courtroom. I'm finna say he killed 19 people, all types of stuff. I'm gonna make him look like the worst person alive so they believe me and let me go. He really said that in open court in front of the jury. Then he doubled down with something even crazier. Woody claimed he told police that Thug did this, Thug did that. specifically because he knew Young Thug didn't do it. Knew it at that point, prosecutors officially labeled him a hostile witness, and from there the trial spiraled into the most chaotic days Atlanta courts have probably ever seen. What Lil Woody did on that stand, something you almost never witness in a major criminal case. Usually once cooperating witnesses lock into deals with prosecutors, they stick to the script, but Woody sat down and started tearing apart the same case he was originally supposed to support, and it got messy fast. Prosecutors questioned Woody's coup about the Hertz rental paperwork with Young Thug's name on it. Woody snapped. He told prosecutor Simone Hilton, "No disrespect, Miss Hilton, but you getting on my nerves. Leave me alone." Right there in open court talking to the assistant he constantly answered questions with "I don't remember" report. Inside the courtroom even noticed him yawning during testimony, literally yawning in the middle of a murder trial. He admitted he was good at lying when prosecutors tried, arguing that parts of his 2015 interrogation matched real evidence. Woody pushed back and said just because one detail happened to be true doesn't mean the rest wasn't fabricated. Then Brian Steele went to work during cross-examination, and Steele's strategy was surgical. He didn't just paint Woody as dishonest. He practically tried turning him into the prime suspect. Steele walked the jury through Woody's criminal history, including aggravated assault, terroristic threats, theft, and firearm possession as a felon. He even showed jurors a 2020 off-the-porch interview where Woody said he only wanted to be known as a gangster. Then Steele pulled up Woody's music video, A Homicide, where Woody and his friend Trevante Threat Turner acted out a fictional killing. Steele also reminded jurors Woody previously testified that after renting the Infiniti alongside Young Thug at the Atlanta airport, he loaned the vehicle to Threat Turner and didn't see it again until after the murder when Steele confronted him about those earlier statements. Woody claimed he misspoke out of frustration at that point. Woody was telling multiple different stories and struggling to keep them straight. Steele also introduced claims that Woody's issues with Big Nut were personal, not tied to Young Thug. He alleged Woody stole from Nut's vehicle, knew Nut wanted retaliation, and may have had his own motive before ISIL politics even entered the picture. Woody denied killing Big Nut. He insisted what happened to Nut ain't got nothing to do with ISIL. This got everything to do with Threat. Not me, I was protecting Threat from the start, but then less than 2 hours later he claimed he didn't know whether Threat was involved at all. And here's the truly insane part. Woody had previously told police he felt pressure to do something involving Young Thug because everybody around him believed he killed Nut, meaning the rumors and pressure surrounding closing in on him. Long before this trial ever started, the streets were already pointing fingers at Woody for Big Nut's murder, and according to reporting from the trial, that pressure allegedly pushed him into thinking about retaliation against Young Thug for supposedly putting that heat on his name. Think about how crazy that is. The man prosecutors brought in as the star wit against Thug walked out of that courtroom after basically implicating himself, pointing blame at his now deceased friend, Threat contradicting nearly every major detail from his 2015 interrogation, arguing back and forth with prosecutors, and openly admitting to the jury that he made up large parts of the story to protect himself. At that point, the prosecution's case was hanging by a thread. Now here's the bigger conversation, and why this situation matters beyond just Young Thug's legal battle. The ISIL versus YFN war that exploded after Big Nut's murder in January 2015 wasn't just some side story. Prosecutors claimed that over the next 7 years, more than 50 shootings and murders were connected to the back-and-forth violence between these two sides. 50. That means year after year, people in Atlanta were dying or getting shot because of fallout tied to one murder outside one barbershop. And look at what happened afterward. YFN Lucci, who grew up with Big Nut and later honored him with a tribute project, got hit with his own massive 105-count RICO indictment in 2021. Eventually, he pleaded guilty to violating Georgia's Street Gang Terrorism and Prevention Act and accepted a 20-year sentence. Though only a small portion had to be served behind bars, but for years those charges had him staring down the possibility of life in prison, and prosecutors connected all of that to the same violent environment that escalated after Big Nut's death. Even Young Thug's child's mother allegedly became a target during the feud. According to details surrounding the case, the violence spread in every direction. People who never signed up for the war still got caught in it. and it completely reshaped Atlanta's streets and music scene at the same time. And then there's the courtroom itself. Young Thug Jeffrey Williams had been locked up in Fulton County Jail since May 2022, spending more than 2 years behind bars without bond. He pleaded not guilty across the board. His attorney Brian Steele kept repeating throughout the trial that YSL was a music label, not a gang, and accused prosecutors of overreaching. But by the time Georgia's longest criminal trial finally crawled toward an ending, the entire case had already become a circus. The original judge got removed after an improper ex-parte meeting. One of the co-defendants, Shannon Stillwell, was stabbed inside the courthouse. A juror ended up arrested. A major witness's lawyer got suspended in the middle of testimony, and witness after witness either contradicted themselves or accidentally strengthened the defense's argument. Then came Lil Woody's courtroom flip. Whether you think his 2015 police interrogation was truthful or you believe what he said on the stand years later, one thing became crystal clear. These massive RICO cases are often built around cooperating witnesses who have every reason to tell investigators whatever helps themselves the most, and once those same witnesses stop cooperating years later, the entire structure starts shaking. Woody looked that jury dead in the eyes and admitted, "I'm good at lying." Those were his own words. He openly admitted he lied to police to save himself, and once a witness confesses in open court that they're skilled at manipulating stories, it becomes almost impossible for jurors to confidently decide what's true and what isn't. But no matter where you stand on whether Young Thug ordered the hit or not, clears throat one thing this trial made obvious is that Donovan Big Nut Thomas Jr.'s murder still doesn't feel fully solved. Nobody has been convicted for it. Yak Gotti and Shannon Stillwell, who were accused of involvement in the killing, remain tied up in a case that dragged on for years. The alleged mastermind still says he's innocent, and the prosecution's key witness spent days on the stand tearing apart his own earlier statements. Meanwhile, Big Nut's mother sat there and watched all of it unfold. She told jurors about her son, the Little Peanut nickname she gave him as a baby, the young man trying to build something through music and artist management and artist minute. After all these years, she still hasn't gotten the type of closure a murder conviction is supposed to bring. Now zoom out for a second, because this story is bigger than Young Thug, bigger than Lil Woody, and honestly bigger than any one person's guilt or innocence. What the YSL RICO case really exposed is something Atlanta Magazine talked about clearly. In Atlanta's music culture, the line between street life and the rap industry has always been blurry. Young Thug built YSL as both a label and a lifestyle, a movement and a brand. Prosecutors argued that same identity was actually a gang, period. And that leads into another major debate. This case put under the spotlight rap lyrics as criminal evidence. Prosecutors pointed to lyrics from Thug's song with Yak Gotti and claimed lines like "a 100 rounds in a Tahoe" were coded confessions tied to Donovan Thomas's murder. The defense argued that's exactly how art gets criminalized, how metaphors get twisted into motive, and how artists end up fighting prison time over creative expression. That argument existed long before this case, and it's definitely not ending here. But the YSL trial became the biggest stage that debate has ever played out on, and both the jury and the culture watching from outside had to wrestle with a difficult question. Can you separate the music from real life? Or was Atlanta's rap scene in 2015 so connected to street politics that separating the two became impossible? And through all of this, don't lose sight of Big Nut himself. Donovan Thomas Jr. was somebody trying to balance both worlds. He was moving deeper into the music industry, managing artists, building relationships. But the streets still caught up with him outside that barbershop on a January night before his kids even had a real chance to know their father. Since then, YFN Lucci's life has gone through constant legal trouble. Rich Homie Quan stepped away from Rich Gang shortly after Big Nut's death, and reports later suggested the situation was directly tied to losing Nut. He wasn't just a manager. Quan was his mentor, his close friend, his support system. Publicly, Quan said he wanted to focus on solo music, but people around Atlanta understood there was way more happening underneath the surface, and the tension between Quan and Young Thug, which had already existed quietly for years, never fully disappeared, partly because of what happened to the man connecting both sides. That's what murder really does. It doesn't just take one life, it changes everything around it. Relationships break apart. Friendships die off. People who once shared rooms together suddenly can't even stand near each other anymore. And after more than 50 shootings tied to the fallout, entire neighborhoods ended up raising kids in the middle of a war, sparked by what happened on January 10th, 2015. Let me keep it real with y'all before we close this out. The question of who actually killed Big Nut, who physically fired those shots during the drive-by, still doesn't have a clean-cut courtroom answer. Lil Woody pointed toward his friend. Threat later died. Yak Gotti and Shannon Stillwell, remain tied to murder charges inside one of the messiest legal cases Georgia has ever seen in Young Thug. The man prosecutors described as the architect behind everything eventually walked away after accepting a plea deal in October 2023 on reduced charges instead of fighting the full RICO case. To the end, he entered an Alford plea, meaning he maintained his innocence while acknowledging prosecutors had enough evidence that a jury could possibly convict him after spending nearly 2 years locked up. He walked out with time served free. Now interpret that however you want. Some people believe Thug fought the system as long as possible before taking a deal just to finally get home to his family. Others think prosecutors' case weakened so badly that accepting the plea became the safest move instead of risking trial. The streets formed their own opinions. The internet came up with its own verdicts. And the courtroom delivered an outcome that honestly left almost nobody fully satisfied. But here's the biggest thing people should remember: Donovan Thomas Jr. was a real person. He was a father, a manager, a son whose mother nicknamed him a nut because she thought he looked like a little peanut when he was born. He was trying to build something bigger for himself, and no matter what street politics surrounded him, no matter what investigators claimed he may have been cooperating about, none of that changes. The reality that his death sent shockwaves through Atlanta that are still being felt today. People over 7 years, that's the number prosecutors attached to the aftermath. 50 people shot or killed in the war that allegedly exploded after his murder. And behind every one of those situations, there are families, kids, mothers, people left grieving the same way. Big nuts, loved ones were left grieving. This was never entertainment, never just rap gossip. This was real life. If y'all got thoughts on who really ordered that hit, drop them in the comments. And if you haven't subscribed already, go ahead and tap in, because we got more deep dives on the way, and the next one might be even crazy. And this, y'all already know what time it is.